Okay, morning everybody, and a very warm welcome to our latest Original Thinking podcast series. I'm Jim Pendrell, I'm the Research Communications Lead here at the school. I'm delighted today to be joined by Michelle Carter, who is Professor of Information Systems here at the school. Without any further ado, I'm going to ask Michelle just briefly to introduce herself, talk about her research areas, and then we'll get
All right.
chatting.
Well, thanks for inviting me, Jim. I'm a professor of information systems, and in that role, my research looks at how people identify with the information technologies they use, how we're designing and building a world for people to identify with information technologies, and what are the implications of that for society as well as for us as human beings. But a lot of my research is also informed by my other role that I have here at the school, because I'm the Director of Equality, Diversity and Inclusion. And in that role, I'm working with professional and academic staff to really think strategically about how we make this a more inclusive working environment for staff and an inclusive educational environment for students.
Great. Well, in terms of sort of the topics of today, I think an obvious perhaps starting point is to talk about AI and its impact, which is obviously now almost all-encompassing. And I wanted to start off with a very broad question, which I know is one you've been looking to yourself, which is, are we doing enough to ensure AI actually impacts our lives in beneficial ways for the social good, if you like? I mean, I know that's a very broad question, but I know it's something you've been looking at. Just what is your view, if you like, on that?
So firstly, I think that technology itself is agnostic. I don't think that I definitely don't think tech is evil. I think that those of us who work in tech, we're always looking to find solutions to make people's lives better, businesses, education, healthcare, and individuals. But sometimes the pace at which we create change outstrips our understanding of the consequences. And so we're looking for those solutions. How can we make things more efficient? How can we perhaps help in healthcare? How can we help in customer service, et cetera, et cetera? But what are the other sides of things? And I think we've traditionally, over the years, been slow on that side of things. And with AI and just how quickly it's taken off, I don't think we talked about AI for years and years and years, and then suddenly we had ChatGPT, and I don't think anybody, even OpenAI, really anticipated the demand and how quickly it would take off. And so we need to pick up the pace to really think about whether we're benefiting people in the way we want to.
In terms of sort of the unintended consequences, perhaps, of our rush to AI, what are they, do you think?
So there's a few. One, let's start with academia. So in academia, we do different types of research. We build things, we design things, but also we research what the impacts of things are. And as AI is such a rapidly evolving technology, our ability to keep up with the pace of that change, research takes time. Theorizing takes time, and yet we need to create the right frameworks to be able to understand things, to help inform policies and practices. But we're doing that against a backdrop that's very, very, very dynamic change. In education, how are we going to be educating our students to keep up with this dynamic landscape of technology change? And I don't think we know yet. So those are just two areas.
Yeah. I mean, I know you've talked about before whether the speed of change actually is compromising somehow the ability to conduct research in ways that are responsible almost. I mean, that's it's quite a deep question, that, isn't it? But is that?
Yeah, and I think we started to see it a little bit with the advent of big data analytics, which is really like a precursor to where we are now, where we started to see the tenor of research change a little bit. So suddenly people had access to great big data sets and were able to create predictive models, and we face a certain pressure as academics to publish, and I think that it's quicker perhaps to do research that where you're analyzing huge data sets and being able to predict things than it is to write theory papers, for example, or to conduct longitudinal studies with individuals, or long-term ethnographic studies and things like that. So we started to see the more quantitative driven research, and I think now with AI we're going to, one of the challenges that we face is we see businesses using these technologies, and we have to be careful that we don't start using the same techniques as business in order to make our work more efficient, because we're still here to observe and inform and set directions.
I mean, as a business school, we're sort of we're in the middle here, aren't we? Really,
right.
It's like, okay, so do we sort of follow what business in terms of the tools they're using, or do you know what I mean? It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, which way around is it? Do we help inform businesses in their thinking?
I mean, ideally, what we would be wanting to do is we're providing the original thinking applied, right?
Exactly.
So we don't want to be chasing the tail. We want to be being there, being a resource for businesses to help them implement these technologies in ways that don't just benefit them from a monetary standpoint, but also benefit them in terms of their workforce, in terms of how they want to be socially responsible in this world as well.
Let's just turn to sort of regulatory frameworks here. Again, it's something I know that you've been looking into in depth. Is and the extent to which are they evolving fast enough in this present situation we're in, and also the balance between innovation, regulation, and also precaution. That whole discussion, if you like. I mean,
I don't want to sound like a Luddite here, right? And I don't want to sound like I'm anti-AI. I'm not at all. I think it's got huge potential. But, we do need guidelines for its use. We need policies around things like transparency and accountability. We need to know what's going into a model. So on what basis decisions are being made, right? We need to know who is responsible for those decisions. And we need policies around explainability. So, and by that I mean being able to say, well, this is the data that went in. This is the basis for the decision making. So for example, if you take a bank loan, if somebody's refused a bank loan, we need to be able to explain on what basis that decision was made, because we want to be sure that we're not discriminating against some people because it's based on data that was itself biased or discriminatory. When you look at the potential of using AI for medical diagnoses and things, which it's got huge potential in that area, we want to be able to show what were the factors in that data, in the data that went into it, what factors were most influential? In terms of a patient's history, for example, how much was a patient's history weighted in the decision against symptoms that have just arisen? And so we need to think about, as we're designing tools, guidelines around things like explainability, transparency, accountability, to be sure that we are using AI responsibly.
I mean, rather than sort of regulations, if you like, because is it almost impossible to regulate this when it's all different organisations have different tools? Is it more about the guidelines and within businesses, organisations, they have to have clear sets of guidelines rather than sort of some government saying you've got to do X, Y, Z.
Right. I mean, I think we already have some. So we have some regulatory frameworks, and in some ways we need guidelines that help us comply with those frameworks, right? So, for example, I think in the EU's GDPR, people have a right to explanation for decisions made by automated tools. So since we have those frameworks, they are regulations. In order to be able to comply with them, we have to think about the way that we create the tools, and make sure that they are explainable, they are transparent, and there is accountability.
And within organisations, businesses, or public sector, whose responsibility is it to ensure this happens? I presume we're talking about the CEO or the leader of that organisation, presumably. I mean, who else is going to be able to sort of oversee this?
Well, ultimately, it'll be the board, right?
Yeah.
It's an interesting one because, even within business, there are tensions, right? There are tensions between the need to use information technologies in ways that most benefit you. So you want the flow of information. You want to get as much data in as possible so the decisions you're making are as accurate as possible and you're not making decisions based on flawed data. At the same time, there are security issues, there are privacy issues, and so we have chief privacy officers now, as well as chief information officers. We have chief information security officers, and often these people need to work together, but often their goals are different. A chief information officer's goal is about partly making sure that information flows in ways that benefit. An information security officer is how do I protect the data, and the chief privacy officer is concerned about how do I make sure that we're doing things ethically and maintaining people's privacy.
The impression I get is that right now almost every organisation is grappling with these kind of issues, aren't they? And it's do you sense that they're looking for sort of help? Where do we go to help us through this maze, and this fast evolving situation?
Because we don't know, because it is all happening so quickly, and I think that AI is already becoming an important part of people's everyday lives,
without realizing.
Type something into Google at the moment, and the response that comes out is an AI-generated response at the top of the page. AI can be used to write emails, to schedule reminders for all sorts of repetitive tasks, and people, are using AI as a conversation partner. I'll just check this with ChatGPT before I send this email. See, we're on the same page. That's all great because from that point of view, that can free people up for more creative tasks, and for organizations. If I can use AI in my customer service, to help my customer service agents be more efficient and help customers more efficiently, this is going to save money. It's going to hopefully make customer service more efficient but more effective. But there's another side to that. And the other side to that is how much of those capabilities are we, while we're feeling empowered, how much are we unwittingly giving over to the technology? I don't know about you, but I've been in situations recently with customer service where it has felt like,
I think everyone probably is the same.
We've been, the other person has been working their way through a guided script. At the point where there are exceptions to what's in that script, we completely lost.
This is I think customer service, Elijah mentioned it, is an interesting area, actually, isn't it? Because someone will say, well, AI is going to make it much better. These chatbots are going to just make everything much, much more experienced. You'll get your answers you need quickly. But others will say, well, hang on, if customer service is already poor, say somewhere, and then AI is layered on top of that by the organisation, maybe to save costs or whatever. You could have an even worse experience.
Oh, you could end up in an endless loop of that you can't get out of.
Yeah.
Because because the truth is that in the real world, we don't know all situations, right? So whatever most of the situations that happen, most of the problems that happen in customer service are going to be ones that companies have seen time and time and time again. That's great. But then at the same time, there are going to be those exceptions where what you need is your experienced staff who've been in the business for years and know this stuff and go, oh yeah, I saw that donkeys years ago and I remember what that problem is. Or somebody to actually have some autonomy, some agency to take responsibility.
Yeah. This goes back to our first point in this discussion about the unintended consequences of rushing towards AI. Let's talk about another area, which is accessibility, which I know is again something you've been, I know, looking into as well, and the fact that not everyone has access to digital tools. I think a recent study from Age UK says something like 6 million people, 6 million older people are either not online or struggle to navigate the internet safely in the UK. I mean, that's an extraordinary figure. I mean, this is a major issue here, isn't it, in terms of this wider debate?
This is a really critical issue, because increasingly in the National Health Service, for example, AI is being used for diagnoses, to help schedule appointments. The only way people can get in touch with their GPs is online. First of all, the appointments are being triaged through online. If people don't have access to the internet, if people don't have smartphones, as the National Health Service goes increasingly down this path, then the concern is that actually we're excluding people from services when they're at their most vulnerable. I mean, 65 is not that old, but, I think we feel like smartphones have been around forever, but, the iPhone was invented in 2007. And so those people were 50s, at that point. And to get to your 50s and not having used the technology, that at that point you don't necessarily feel like you need to know this technology. What you don't realize is that 15 years later,
you're going to have to.
15 years later, everyone's assuming that you do. And so I do worry. I do worry for older people, but I also worry for the rest of us, because, we're also going to age.
Well, I've got to quote you here. This is from a recent article that we put together. You talked about the fact that the mastery of each new technological iteration seems more fleeting. So how do you equip, not just older people, but actually younger people as well, and students with the skills they need? So this affects us all.
Oh yes, I mean it's. I worry that we're going to feel less competent in our lives at earlier ages, that's a concern, particularly since we're living longer. So we have to be able to adapt to these changes, and we honestly don't know how quickly things can change. I don't know about you, but I certainly have a sense that things are changing a lot more now than they were 10 years ago, a lot more quickly. But in many ways, within education, the way that our degree programs are set up, the way that we've taught people, we're teaching students in many ways in the same way that we have done for generations. But what are the critical skills we need to teach them in order to be able to adapt? Because I think that's the thing. How do we teach students that adaptability to things and that continuous learning? So the degree courses themselves, or the degree programs, are about setting people up for a life of continuous adaptation.
Yeah, I'm glad you used the word adaptation, because again, this piece that you wrote, you talked about the widening chasm between the pace of this technological change and actually our capacity as humans to adapt.
Yes.
Which might sound very deep observation, but actually it's probably true, isn't it? The fact that we can't keep up, can we?
Not really. I mean, the problem we have as human beings is that we're not very good at predicting what's coming. We can only predict what's coming based on what exists now. We're very linear in our thinking. And so this is why we're constantly caught out by disruptive technologies, why businesses go under because of disruptions, right? But while we're very bright in many ways, and on one hand you can think, well, AI is not anywhere near a point of being like a super intelligent AI with general intelligence that outstrips human capacity. In part, that is because we ourselves don't fully understand the complexities of our cognitions. If we understood them better, then we might actually get to a super intelligent AI much sooner. But I think, we have limited capacity to take in information. We have limited capacity to change, and we have an inherent need as human beings for stability. So we're in this very interesting time where we have a tension between that fundamental need for stability and this competing fundamental need that we have to expand our capabilities and grow and change with the pace of technological change. And it's going to be, very interesting times ahead.
Yeah, in fact, it's a fascinating discussion. Okay, just a couple of, perhaps finally, I mean, I know you're very involved in the Americas Conference on Information Systems, which holds a big conference in the summer, this summer, I think it's next month, isn't it? And just talk a little bit about the things you're going to be talking about there, because I know, you, excuse me, in terms of AMBS representation at the conference is you'll be very prominent.
It's going to be in Utah. It's actually the theme of the conference is about elevating life through digital social entrepreneurship. So, I think in a world where we have such rapid changes, then thinking about using digital technologies to make people's lives better and being entrepreneurial and innovative about it is of great importance. The conference itself has got information systems academics and professionals from around the world. It's our second biggest conference of the year, and we'll all be meeting in Salt Lake City to talk. We'll be talking about things like AI, thinking about societal impacts, thinking about the role of information technologies in the world. It's what gets
all the
us
things
up
we've
in
been
the
talking
morning.
about this podcast.
It's what gets us out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, no, exactly. But I think the point was that these are discussions which globally are being held amongst academics, but also I'm sure businesses as well are sort of grappling with this. And,
I think it's businesses, academics, governments. It's definitely something that is. It's not just something we're going through here. It is a global phenomenon.
Do you think part of the challenge is that I guess a lot of governments will say, well, it's up to businesses and organisations to work out what tools they want to use. A more laissez-faire approach, perhaps. Because there have been meetings up in the UK. We're saying, do we need to agree on what the regulations are? I know it's probably maybe too early for you to know, but which way you think it might go? I mean, do you think we are going to get more regulations, or actually governments will because it's so huge, this whole that they're going to have to say, well, actually, we're going to have to sort of let organisations decide.
I mean, organisations are going to do what they do, whether governments sit back or don't, right? So you take social media. I think we see with social media and the amount of misinformation and such that's available on social media, and how social media has kind of taken off in ways that people never expected. The consequences of not getting involved early on. And now you add in the capability for deepfake videos and other stuff on social media, I think that governments recognize they can't wait. But the thing is, I mean, government ministers don't themselves have expertise in these areas. We as academics who are researching in this area, teaching in this area, working with businesses, we have to get involved and be proactive. And because the AI is such a disruption that regardless perhaps of where our own research streams were going, the research programs we were building are going, we have to recognize that this is a disruption to us too, that we have to respond to. You have to start thinking now about the ethical and social implications of what's coming, and maybe some of the projects that we've been working on maybe are not as interesting or not as urgent as working together to deal with this.
Mm. I mean, it's interesting as well you mentioned that, because I know just recently actually the Faculty of Humanities here at the university was awarded a significant amount of money to invest in academics precisely in this area of trust, society, and so to that we as a university are at the forefront of these discussions, as you say. So, yeah.
And I think across the university, it's AI and discussing AI and thinking a bit about AI is going to be something we're all part of, regardless of what disciplinary focus. It's going to touch everything. And I think among the schools, I mean, our relationship with businesses, with organizations, profit and not-for-profit, and government entities means that ANBS has got to be at the forefront of it.
Yeah, I think that's a very fitting note from which to end, which I'm sure we could talk much longer, but I think the areas you've covered there are absolutely fascinating, and there's interesting to see how these debates develop and pan out.
Let's revisit this in a year.
Let's revisit next time and see where we are.